Hey everyone, James Lynch here, back on my YouTube channel, doing a quick video on a question I get asked all the time, which is how did I start covering MMA as a career? And I think in order to answer that, I got to go back to when I actually became a fan of MMA. So I'll tell you that story here. And first, let me start off by saying that I actually grew up a pro wrestling fan. There was like 3 or 4 years during my teens where I was obsessed with pro wrestling. In the middle of the Attitude Era, I was all about it. Stone Cold Steve Austin, Mankind, The Rock, you name it. I was all about that back in the day. And I never envisioned myself ever covering pro wrestling as a profession. Back then, I was more interested in covering hockey. Hockey and pro wrestling were my two favorite things. But at a certain point, I lost love for pro wrestling. It was sort of just hockey only from then on until I got to university. I was flipping through the channels one day, and like most, I was a big fan of reality television, and I see this guy knocking down this guy's door in this house, and this fight almost happening. I'm like, what the heck is this? And this was season 1 of The Ultimate Fighter. This is where Chris Liebman went and knocked down Forrest Griffin's door because he was looking for Bobby Southworth. I'm sure you guys have seen the episode, but that's sort of what initially got me into watching The Ultimate Fighter, was that exact moment. So I remember they had a marathon of The Ultimate Fighter going on later on Spike TV, and I watched all the episodes. I was hooked. I was like, this is the coolest thing ever. And I didn't know much about the UFC. I wasn't one of those kids who went to the video store and rented the VHS or anything like that. That wasn't even on my radar at that time. This was like I said, around 2005, while I was in university going to Carleton in Ottawa, studying communication. So I was already planning on becoming a hockey broadcaster, hockey reporter, and here I was getting into this new sport. And this was back when the UFC used to do barely any events. They used to do like a pay-per-view a month. I don't even think they were doing fight nights at that time, and it was kind of this like cool secret. I remember myself and a couple close friends, we knew about this sport, and it wasn't like a big thing at that point I should say. They hadn't come to Canada yet. It was very just kind of cool to be a fan. So I remember the first UFC pay-per-view I watched was UFC 56, where Rich Franklin knocked out Nate Quarry stiff. If you remember that, go Google it. Pretty interesting card. And then from there I started watching Pride, and I was watching everything else that they had to offer. And then fast forward a few years later, I'm trying to get my start in the broadcasting industry, and I end up getting an internship at Fight Network. It just so happened I moved to Toronto. Fight Network was there. It kind of went hand in hand. So Fight Network was the very first exposure I ever had to covering MMA. It was really cool. I was really lucky at the time. I got to work with some really talented people. Mauro Ranallo was there at the time, John Pollock, John Ramdeen. I got to learn a lot while I was there, and I wasn't even an on-air guy. I wasn't a writer or anything. I just started off as a video editor. I remember my first job there, I was editing old K1 fights. I'd have to cut them down from these 7-hour shows to 3 hours or something like that. But it was cool. I was all about it, and I really got to was really exposed to a lot of different MMA at that time, because I think at the time I pretty much was only watching the UFC. So all this happens, my career keeps going. I eventually leave Fight Network just because I wasn't getting paid great. I wanted to sort of move along with my career, so I ended up moving over to TSN at the time, getting hired as a digital editor, just editing highlights and stuff for their website. And on the side, one of the guys that worked there was like, hey, I know you used to work at Fight Network. Do you want to do some writing for our website? So I was like, yeah, sure. Now I wasn't getting paid for this, but think of the exposure I had such early on, and I was not a good writer at all. So Justin Boone, I got to give him props if he's ever watching this. I got to give him props for this, because he gave me an opportunity at the time, which was unreal. So because it was TSN, I was getting some good interviews. This was way back in the day. I remember I got an interview with Shogun Hua, when I probably didn't deserve it at the time, but it was cool just to get to do those interviews early on. So I was just freelancing on the side, not making a penny, and then I had my day job. On top of all this, I realized that, working for TSN, even as a freelancer, I could get credentials. Now, this was long before TSN had the television rights to cover the UFC. Sportsnet had them at the time. So they were still considered a big outlet, but they didn't have the TV rights. So UFC 165 was the first MMA event I ever covered. I was actually cage side for that one. Imagine that. I get to watch Jones and Gustafsson as the first ever UFC card I get to cover as a member of the media. Totally unreal experience. And I got hooked at that point. I was like, this is what I want to do. So as I'm going along, I ended up switching day jobs, ended up working for a rival company of TSN called Rogers, which actually owns Sportsnet. And I couldn't freelance at TSN anymore. So I was like, crap. So I got in touch with Sportsnet. I said, hey, look, this is what I was doing for TSN as a freelancer. Would you guys mind bringing me on? And, not as a paid position, but just to have the exposure. They said, sure. That was a key moment for me, because again, it would mean that I could continue to cover events using them as credentials, and also, get some exposure out there. And it really helped. It was a really good move on my part. On top of all this, I wanted to do a little bit more than just some writing. So Adam Martin, someone who was living in Toronto at the time when I was, actually still lives in Toronto, him and I sort of got in touch. I think we just met online. We followed each other and we started talking, and we decided that we wanted to do a podcast together called The Parting Shot, which we were doing for years. And at the time, I was also doing another podcast, believe it or not, called Fit for Radio. One of my roommates, he was, a personal trainer, and I was, I'm big into fitness and stuff like that. That was actually something that, I just came to him with, and I said, hey, let's do a podcast together. So my friend and I did this podcast for a couple years, and I decided, I'll do another one with MMA, and it was Adam and I doing it. And then this was a key moment as well, because when Adam and I started doing the podcast, it was just audio only, and then we started adding guests and adding more segments. Nick Kalikas from MMA Oddsbreaker, who Adam was working for, came to us and said, hey, do you want to have your podcast on our site? I think we were with Radio Influence before. We weren't getting paid anything, but here is MMA Oddsbreaker coming to us and saying, hey, we're willing to pay you to do this show every week. And I was like, absolutely. So that really started, me, getting more involved in the industry. So Adam and I were doing the podcast every week, and then that led to me doing some writing for MMA Oddsbreaker, and then eventually it led to me doing video interviews for MMA Oddsbreaker. Now keep in mind, all I ever wanted to do was be on camera and be an on-air personality, and here I was having the opportunity to do that. And I got to give credit to Frank Trigg, because he was working there at the time doing the exact same thing. And I thought, you know what, Frank's got his interviews, I'll try and do mine. And my mentality back then was, there wasn't a lot of people doing video interviews at the time, through Skype. And I felt like there was a lot of fighters that weren't getting a lot of exposure. So I said yes to every single interview I was ever offered. I was doing a lot of regional fighters, and that really paid off in the long run, because I was able to develop all of these relationships over the years. And fighters were just happy to give me the time of day, because they weren't getting a lot of exposure. So it was great for me, because it really allowed me to hone my craft. I wasn't getting big name fighters right off the bat. I was talking to some regional fighters. But again, those are some relationships that I still have to this day, because I've been interviewing them throughout their career. So, big ups to Nick Kalikas, because he gave me my first ever paying job in the industry, and that really helped me get to where I needed to get to. And that also led to me getting an opportunity with Flow Combat back in 2016, where I was freelancing for them, doing video interviews. And credit to Dwayne Finley, shout out to Dwayne Finley for giving me that opportunity. And it really just solidified that I knew that I belonged in this industry, and I knew I could cover the sport, and I could do these interviews, and people seemed to like them. And I was getting better. I mean, when I first started, I was not great, and I think I've definitely gotten a lot better since then. So all this is happening. I'm freelancing on the side. I'm actually making pretty good money and pretty happy about it. And all of a sudden, life comes in the way, and I'm going to be a dad. And this is 2017. We're going to fast forward till then. I'm doing my day job and I'm freelancing on the side. I can't do both. I certainly can't keep this up. So I remember having this conversation with my wife, and I'm like, I don't know if I can give this up. I really enjoy doing the interviews and covering events and things of that nature. So I strategically, and this is the key word here, strategically looked at my finances and looked at how much would I need to do to make it so I could do this full time. Because I remember for years, I just thought all I need to do is get on with one outlet and I'll be good. But I never really thought that I could just work for a bunch of different websites and make up that same salary. So that's what I did. So I think back then I went to Fightful first, got in touch with them. They hired me. It was great. Jimmy Van, shout out to him. I remember we had a lunch in Toronto. He's from there. He signed me up there. Then Fansided Mike Dice, when he was working there, he brought me on there, and I just got on with a bunch of other outlets, MMA Mania as well. I was a video editor for them. So I was doing a combination for about a year and a half of video interviews, writing, and video editing. And that's why if you've seen other videos on this channel, I tell everyone the smartest thing you can do is to learn everything and be as versatile as possible. So it really allowed me to do that as a full-time career. And I was set on doing that for a while. I mean, I loved the freedom of it. I could pick my schedule. I could pick who I wanted to talk to. Everything was working out pretty well up until May of last year, May 2019. The Score came to me out of the blue and they said, hey, we want someone to head up our MMA department. We're really trying to revive it. And, it came together. And I always told myself if I had a full-time opportunity, that I could get, with benefits and salary, I would take it because, I'm a dad. I have a family. That stuff's really important. So I jumped on it and the rest is history, as they say. So I hope I answered that question for you guys. It's been a long road. It didn't just start overnight, me getting a full-time job. I know a lot of people have that idea, I'll do a couple of years and then I'll get hired. It takes some time. I mean, I'm proof of that. And I'm glad I went through the process I did, because doing that many interviews, I mean, go look on this channel. I have hundreds and hundreds of interviews. You can see me getting better. You can see me fixing those small mistakes, and I still make mistakes, but I think in general, it really allowed me to become a better journalist and a better reporter at the end of the day. So, going the path I did, I think is the best method. And you're seeing a lot of other people sort of go that route and find success as well. So Follow me on Twitter and on Instagram at Lynch on Sports. I hope this was really helpful. If you guys have any questions, post them in the comments below. Or, like I said, follow me on those social media platforms. DM me. My DMs are always open. I'm more than happy to answer questions because I do get a lot of questions about how to get in this industry, how to cover it, how to make a living. And if you can learn anything from this video, it's that, I started with regional fighters. I think there's a lot of regional MMA that doesn't get covered. And that's how I was able to find my lane, build those relationships. And then that led to me getting bigger and better interviews. Subscribe to this channel, youtube.com/Lynch on Sports. I'll try and release videos when I can. Obviously, I'm busy doing my job at the Score, but I'll release stuff when I can. And I hope you guys have a great day. Thanks so much for watching.